Well, hello. Today we have a reading from classic Chassidic tales as told by Mayer Levin. So let's take a look at it for a minute. Classic Chassidic tales. Let's see. 1 minute. This is classic Chassidic tales. The name of the story is Thrice He Laughed. Thrice he laughed. 3 times he laughed. 1 minute, we'll find it. We shall find it. 1 minute. Nice day today. Happy New Year. Happy New Year. Let me find it. Thrice he, oh, here we have it. Thrice he laughed. The mysterious laughter of the Baal Shem Tov and the Sabbath of Shabbatai, the bookbinder. The meal of Sabbath Eve was ready upon the table. Rabbi Israel's head was sunken, and anxiety was deep upon his face. His scholars, seated about the long table, were silent. The Baal Shem arose and began to speak the blessing over the wine. He lifted his glass, and all at once a golden shine of joy spread over his cheeks and eyes. He raised his glass, threw back his head, and broke forth in merry laughter. In merry laughter he laughed until he had to wipe bright tears from his eyes. The scholars could not understand what might have caused the rabbi's laughter. They looked one to another. They looked at the rabbi. They looked all about the room, but everything was as always. The candles burned, casting their shine upon the long white tablecloth and upon the plates that bore the Sabbath meal, and upon the cups of Sabbath wine. The master had ceased laughing, but all the sadness was gone from his face. He drank his wine and sat cheerily to his meal. He began to eat of the fish. Suddenly he sat down, his eyes looked far away, and again he broke out into laughter. During the entire Sabbath, it was the custom of the scholars never to ask questions of the Baal Shem Tov. Therefore, they could not ask him the cause of his laughter. Let's guess that it's laughter. Therefore, they could not ask him the cause of his strange and sudden joy. 1 moment. They ate and looked one to the other and wondered. And when Rabbi Israel was eating soup, he broke out for the 3rd time into laughter. And this time he laughed with the easy contentment of a father watching his children at play. That night and all through the Sabbath, the students gathered in groups and discussed the rabbi's laughter. 3 times he had laughed, and they sought in the Torah for explanation of his joy, but they could find no certain answer. It was the custom of Rabbi Israel in the evening after the outgoing of Sabbath to receive one of the scholars into his cabin and to answer any question that might have arisen among the disciples during the day of rest. As evening came, the scholars all gathered together and chose Rabbi Wolf from among themselves to go to the master and ask why he had broken out 3 times into laughter during the Sabbath meal. Rabbi Wolf went to the hut in the forest, to which the Baal Shem Tov often withdrew for solitary contemplation. Rabbi Wolf knocked and entered. One moment. Rabbi Wolf knocked and entered. Rabbi Israel asked, smiling, "What questions have the scholars today?" "They would like to know," said Rabbi Wolf, "why the master laughed 3 times during the meal on the eve of Sabbath." "Come," said the Baal Shem Tov, "we will go into the wagon and ride. Perhaps we'll find out the answer to your question." Often on the evening after Sabbath, Rabbi Israel and his students would get into his wagon and ride on the country roads. Now they harnessed the horses, and all of the scholars got into the wagon, and all were silent. Excuse me. The night was soft. It was pleasant. The Baal Shem Tov left the reins lying loosely over his knees. The horses ambled down a forgotten lane, and the Baal Shem hummed to himself, and soon all of the Chassidim were humming. So they rode hour after hour, and instead of turning back, they rode onward. And they rode all through the night. On Sunday morning, they found themselves in a village which they had never seen before. Rabbi Israel halted the wagon in front of a tiny synagogue. He got down and called the Shamash. Soon it was known among all the Jews in the village that the great Rabbi Israel, the Baal Shem Tov, was come among them. Men and women hastened to the marketplace, and mothers ran carrying their children to the rabbi for his blessing, while childless women sought the touch of his hand. When a great many people had assembled, he said, "Are all the Jews of the village here?" The head of the congregation looked from one to the other and said, "All." But Rabbi Israel looked among them as though he sought for someone. And at last he said, "Where is Shabbatai, the bookbinder?" The Shamash ran at once to call the aged Shabbatai. In a moment the Shamash returned, followed by a small gray-haired man, whose blue eyes shone clearly in a mild face. "Let his wife also be called," said Rabbi Israel. Then Shabbatai hurried and fetched his wife. When the two of them were there, Rabbi Israel... One moment. Let's get to the place. Okay. Ask them to stand in the center of the marketplace. On one side of them were all the Jews of the town, and on the other side were Rabbi Israel's scholars. "Now," said the master, "tell me, Shabbatai, exactly what you did on last Sabbath Eve. But tell me everything, and do not be ashamed or afraid to speak." "Master," said Shabbatai, "I shall indeed tell you everything that happened to me, and what I did, and if it is God's will that I be punished, I am ready to accept his punishment, asking no more than to serve him." Then the aged bookbinder told his story. "You must know that since my youth I have lived in this village and practiced my craft as a bookbinder. In those early years when I was filled with vigor, I was able to manage a thriving business, and I lived on all that was best in the world." Okay, so we can stop here. This is Classic Chassidic Tales by Mayer Levin. We'll return with Hashem's help soon for part 2. Seid gesund, Kultur.